Some movies are made. Poetic Justice was survived, a pop star forced to transform, a rapper who walked off set during a riot, and a love story built on chemistry so electric the cast talked about it for decades. These are 20 strange facts about Poetic Justice that will completely change how you see this film. And at the end, a bonus that almost nobody talks about. The co-star who finally confirmed what everyone on that set already knew about Janet and Tupac. So speed up with me because the list starts now. Number 1. Singleton wrote it for Janet, but held fake auditions. John Singleton knew exactly who he wanted before a single audition was scheduled. He'd met Janet Jackson, pitched her the idea, and wrote the entire script with her voice playing in his head. Justice was hers. End of discussion. But Hollywood doesn't operate on certainty. It operates on paperwork and plausible alternatives. Studios need to feel like every option was explored. So Singleton did what the system required. He held auditions, real ones. Jada Pinkett showed up, Lisa Bonet came through, Monica Calhoun read for the part, all of them talented. All of them spending their energy on a role that had already been decided. Singleton later admitted it publicly. He'd told Janet directly when they first met, "I want to do my next movie with you." The auditions were a formality. Theater performed for nervous executives who needed to believe the process was legitimate. Janet walked onto set. Nobody pushed back. And the actresses who genuinely thought they had a shot never realized they were just decorating a decision that had been made months earlier. Sometimes in Hollywood, the process is just the illusion of fairness. Number 2. Ice Cube passed on Lucky and handed Tupac his legacy. Before Tupac Shakur ever read a single line of that script, Ice Cube was the one Singleton wanted for Lucky, but Singleton kept stalling, kept finding reasons not to show Cube the full script. Eventually, Cube got his hands on it, read it cover to cover, and hit a wall at one specific scene. The moment where Lucky kicks his friend Chicago out of the mail truck for a woman he barely knows. That was the deal breaker. "I don't think I'd kick my homeboy out the car for a girl I just met," Cube said. He asked Singleton to change it. Singleton said no. Cube walked. That single refusal over one scene, one moment of loyalty to a fictional character, completely redirected the trajectory of two careers. Singleton picked up the phone and called Tupac Shakur. "You want to do a movie with Janet Jackson?" Tupac didn't even pause. Hell yeah. The role Ice Cube rejected for feeling too soft became the role that turned Tupac into a movie star. The scene Cube found weak, Tupac played as truth. One man's deal breaker became another man's defining performance. That's the kind of hinge point that entire legacies turn on. If you are enjoying this, take 2 seconds and leave a like. Subscribe if you want more videos like this. That support really motivates my work and helps a lot with bringing more content. Number 3. Janet had to gain 10 pounds and study Italian neorealism. Janet Jackson in 1992 was the most polished entertainer on the planet. Pristine, sculpted, pop royalty. And John Singleton looked at all of that and said, none of it works for Justice. So he put her through a complete transformation. First, he told her to gain 10 pounds. Not because he was making a point, because he wanted her softer, more real, less magazine cover. He wanted her to look like a woman who'd never been inside a mansion. Then, he handed her a stack of films. Italian neo-realist cinema. Sophia Loren in Two Women. Gritty, raw, without the gloss. Study how Lauren moved through scenes as a working-class woman. No tricks, just human truth on camera. But Singleton didn't stop at homework. He sent Janet to a South Central hair salon and had her apprentice there. Watch the stylists. Learn how they move, how they talk, who they are. Then he introduced her to real women from his old neighborhood. Women who didn't care that she was Janet Jackson. They hung out, talked, laughed. 2 of them ended up joining her as backup dancers on her next tour. By the time filming began, Janet wasn't playing a character, she'd absorbed a world. Justice felt lived in because Singleton refused to let her fake a single second of it. Number 4. The box braids came from a music video dancer. The hairstyle that defined a generation and turned box braids into a mainstream phenomenon didn't come from a stylist's mood board or a fashion consultant. It came from a dancer in a music video. When Singleton was prepping Poetic Justice, he knew Janet needed a look that felt authentically South Central, but he didn't know what that looked like yet. Then it clicked. He'd recently directed Michael Jackson's Remember the Time video, and one of the dancers, Josie Harris, had been wearing box braids. Tight, clean, stunning on camera. He hadn't forgotten it. Singleton called Fatima Robinson, the film's choreographer, and brought Josie and other dancers from that video to Janet's house. They spent time together, got to know each other. Then Singleton pitched it casually. Why don't we try Janet's hair like Josie's? Janet loved it immediately. What happened next was cultural seismic activity. They took a style rooted in Harlem's history, translated it onto a West Coast film, and it exploded across the country overnight. Women everywhere started asking for Poetic Justice braids. The look became inseparable from the film, from Janet, from an entire aesthetic moment in early 90s black culture. And it all started with a director noticing a dancer in someone else's music video. Number 5. Tupac left the set during the LA riots, April 29, 1992. The Rodney King verdict came down. The officers were acquitted, and Los Angeles did not stay quiet. The city erupted. Singleton was driving towards Simi Valley to shoot the drive-in scene when he heard it on the radio. Meanwhile, back on set, Tupac Shakur heard the news too and made an immediate decision. He left. Didn't ask for permission, didn't wait for a call sheet or a schedule review. He walked off the Poetic Justice set and joined the protests in the streets. Singleton tried to stop him, told him it was dangerous, reminded him they had a production to keep moving. Tupac didn't care. This wasn't a scheduling conflict, this was his community, his city. So the crew waited. Singleton shot around him and kept the production alive. Remarkably, the only project in Los Angeles that didn't completely shut down during the unrest. Eventually, Tupac came back. He returned to set. The work resumed, but what that moment revealed was something no script could have written. Tupac Shakur, in the middle of shooting a major Hollywood film, looked at his neighborhood burning and chose his neighborhood. That kind of conviction doesn't show up on a call sheet. It just shows up in who someone is. Number 6. Maya Angelou's poetry replaced Singleton's own writing. When Singleton started writing Poetic Justice, the plan was simple. He would write Justice's poetry himself. It made sense. He was the director. This was his story, his voice. So he drafted, and then stopped, read what he had, and made one of the most honest creative decisions in the film's entire production. He wasn't good enough. Not for this. He needed something bigger. He called Maya Angelou. Her words had shaped him growing up, and he asked her directly, would she let him use her poetry for Justice's voice? She said yes. Alone, phenomenal woman, a kind of love, some say. Poems that had lived on pages for decades suddenly breathed through Janet Jackson's voice on screen, in front of millions of people who'd never read them. They didn't just add texture, they gave the film a soul it simply would not have had otherwise. Elevated it beyond a road trip romance into something that felt almost sacred. Singleton later called it one of the best decisions he made on the entire project. Not because it was clever, but because it was honest. Some artists know exactly when to step aside and let real greatness fill the space. Number 7. Tupac called playing Lucky therapeutic. In 1992, Tupac Shakur's life off camera was a war zone. Legal battles, industry drama, escalating gang tensions, violence circling everything he touched. And in the middle of all of it, he found something he hadn't expected, a kind of peace. Playing Lucky gave it to him. He said it in multiple interviews, called the experience therapeutic. A real chance to be soft, to be vulnerable, without losing anything. Lucky wasn't a gangster, he was a working man, a grieving father, someone trying to hold on to whatever fragments of normal life still existed. I gotta play somebody who was real, Tupac said, somebody who had feelings, somebody who wasn't just angry all the time. The crew noticed the shift. He was calmer on set, more present, more focused. The love scenes with Janet, the quiet scenes with his daughter, all of it felt personal in a way that wasn't accidental. Tupac was processing his own pain by handing Lucky a piece he couldn't access in his real life. For a few months, he wasn't the controversial rapper making headlines. He was just an actor doing his work, finding something in a fictional character that he desperately needed for himself. Number 8. Spike Lee warned Singleton about the sophomore slump. After Boys in the Hood, John Singleton was one of the most celebrated young filmmakers in Hollywood history. 23 years old, Oscar-nominated for Best Director, the youngest person ever to receive that nomination. Then Spike Lee pulled him aside at an industry event. Two directors, one with a battle-worn career, one still glowing from his debut, standing in a room, and Spike went straight to the point. "They're going to come for you," he said. "After your second film, they'll feel it's their duty to knock you down a peg." This wasn't cruelty. It was mentorship from someone who'd already lived it. After She's Gotta Have It and Do the Right Thing, critics had sharpened their knives for Spike, too. Singleton listened, but he was 23 and bulletproof, at least in his own head. He didn't fully believe it would happen to him. Then Poetic Justice premiered. Reviews came in mixed, unfocused, not as sharp as his debut, sophomore slump. Every critic reached for the same phrase, as if they'd coordinated. The film was held to the impossible standard of a first film that had rewritten what black cinema could be. Spike's warning didn't prevent the blow, but it meant Singleton didn't have to be blindsided by it. Sometimes the most generous thing a mentor can do is just tell you what's coming. Before we keep going, subscribe if you haven't yet. Drop a comment telling me which movie or show you want me to cover next, with strange behind-the-scenes facts. I read every single one. Number 9. Maya Angelou walked into a gang confrontation on set July 1992, filming at an apartment complex near Leimert Park. An extra, reportedly a Bloods member, got into a confrontation with Tupac. The details depend on who you ask. Some say Tupac flashed gang signs. Others say he was defending a female friend who'd been robbed. What's clear is that it escalated fast. Voices raised. Threats made. The extra allegedly claimed Tupac had a .40 caliber pistol, though no other witnesses on set confirmed seeing a weapon. What everyone agreed on, it was loud, it was dangerous, and the production was seconds away from falling apart completely. Then Maya Angelou walked in. Not a director, not a security guard, an elder, a poet. The woman who'd survived more than anyone on that set could comprehend. She pulled Tupac aside quietly and spoke to him privately. Nobody knows exactly what she said, but whatever it was, it worked. Tupac cooled down, got back to work. The set stabilized. In that moment, Maya Angelou wasn't performing a role. She was being exactly who she was, a voice of reason in the middle of chaos. And Tupac, who rarely listened to anyone, listened to her. Number 10. The original cut was 2.5 hours. Columbia cut, 45 minutes. When Singleton delivered his rough cut to Columbia Pictures, he handed them a 2-hour and 30-minute film. Sprawling, intimate, everything he'd built in his head. Columbia handed it back. Test audiences found the pacing slow. The studio panicked and demanded cuts. Not small trims, but a full 45 minutes of removal. Singleton fought it. This was his film, his vision, his story, to tell it whatever length it needed. But eventually, he gave in, went back to the edit bay, and started cutting. Entire subplots disappeared. Dialogue scenes were tightened or erased. The film that emerged ran 109 minutes, leaner, more focused, and fundamentally different from what Singleton had envisioned. He never fully made peace with it. Years later, he admitted the theatrical cut wasn't the film he'd made. It was a negotiated compromise. Somewhere in a studio vault, that longer version still exists, unreleased, unseen. The poetic justice that John Singleton actually created before the studio got nervous and started counting minutes. What was lost in those 45 minutes, nobody outside that editing room has ever been able to say, but Singleton always knew. Number 11. Maya Angelou made Tupac cry with a single question. When Maya Angelou arrived on set to play Aunt June, she didn't know who Tupac Shakur was, didn't know his music, didn't know his reputation, didn't care. What she saw was a young man cursing loudly on set, and she pulled him aside with the quiet authority of someone who had survived things most people can't even imagine. "When was the last time anyone told you how important you are?" she asked him. Tupac went still. Then she continued, "Did you know that people stood on auction blocks and were bought and sold so that you could be standing here today?" The words didn't just land, they detonated. Here was this legendary poet, this woman who had lived through eras of pain, looking at him directly and telling him his existence was the result of centuries of sacrifice, that his life was the product of ancestors who refused to let the bloodline die. Tupac broke down, started weeping right there on set, in her arms, in front of the crew, the man who projected invincibility, the rapper who never flinched, crying like a child who had needed to hear something for years and was finally hearing it. Angelou spoke about it afterward. She didn't see a thug. She saw a young man who had never been told his life mattered. In one conversation, she remedied that. Number 12. Singleton told Tupac to quit rapping. This might be the most audacious thing John Singleton ever said to anyone. As filming progressed, he watched Tupac work, studied his intensity, his screen presence, the way he could fill a frame without trying, and he made a call. Tupac was wasting himself in music. I was the stupidest person in the world to be telling Pac that, Singleton admitted years later. But when we were working initially, he wasn't that good a rapper. I was like, "You're a better actor." Tupac's reaction was immediate and firm. "Hip-hop is my voice, man." For Tupac, rapping wasn't a career choice. It was survival, identity, the only honest expression of who he was and what he'd lived through. Singleton pushed anyway, told him that acting was his real weapon, that he was going to become a major star if he committed to it. Tupac couldn't see it. He wasn't ready to reframe himself, and it turns out Singleton was working from incomplete information anyway. Tupac's music exploded in the years that followed, but he also became an actor who left behind a genuine legacy in just 6 films, all completed before he turned 25. He didn't have to choose, he became both, and that might be the most Tupac outcome of all. Number 13. Janet's secret husband played the dart-throwing co-worker. There's a scene in Poetic Justice, quick, easy to miss, where a co-worker stands in the background of the salon throwing darts. Barely noticeable, completely forgettable, except for one fact that nobody on set was aware of at the time. He was married to the lead actress. Renee Elizondo Jr. appeared in the film in that small role, and he was Janet Jackson's secret husband. The two had married in 1991 with no announcement, no press, no public acknowledgement whatsoever. Total privacy. So when Singleton cast Renee in a tiny background role, nobody realized that husband and wife were quietly sharing the screen. Janet played Justice. Renee threw darts. Their marriage stayed buried for nearly a decade. It wasn't until 2000, when they divorced, that the world found out they'd been married at all. By that point, Poetic Justice had been in homes and on TV for 7 years. Fans went back, re-watched that salon scene, spotted Renee standing there in the background, and realized Janet had been hiding her entire personal life in plain sight the whole time, right there on camera. And nobody caught it. Quick reminder to subscribe if you are enjoying these revelations. And tell me in the comments, do you know any strange fact about this movie that I didn't mention? Let's build the list together. Number 14. The AIDS test controversy almost destroyed the production. The rumor that wouldn't die. Janet Jackson demanded Tupac Shakur take an AIDS test before their kissing scenes. The tabloids ran with it. Gossip columns exploded. On set, the tension spiked. Producer Steve Nicolaides had to deliver the message personally. He walked to Tupac's trailer, knocked, and just said it plain. "Janet wants you to take an AIDS test before the kiss." Tupac looked at him, then started laughing. Nicolaides later said he genuinely thought Tupac found it funny, and it was the early 1990s. AIDS was killing people. Tupac had a reputation, but Tupac drew a line clearly. "I did not disagree if we were really going to make love, but if I'm going to do a love scene with her just like somebody else did and they didn't take a test, I'm not taking a test." The whole thing became a circus. Then years later, Singleton revealed the actual origin of the story. It started as a joke on set. Him and Tupac both flirting with Janet. Someone made a remark about the test, and someone else leaked it. A throwaway comment between two men competing for a woman's attention became a national scandal that followed both stars for years. The punchline turned into a headline. Number 15. Tupac said he had to actually fall in love with Janet. Method acting has 100 definitions. But Tupac Shakur's version was the most straightforward. He couldn't fake the chemistry, so he wouldn't try. Early in production, he told people around him that he was going to genuinely fall for Janet Jackson, not perform it, feel it. "I had to let myself be attracted to her," he said. "I had to open myself up," and he did. Regina King watched it unfold from the inside. She saw how Tupac looked at Janet between takes, the way he leaned in when she spoke, the shift in his energy when she entered the room. Having Janet and Tupac was huge, King said years later. He was one of the biggest hip-hop stars, and she was definitely the biggest pop star. I think they were both impressed with each other, but I don't think either of them wanted to let the other know. The chemistry in the film isn't performed. It's present. It's in the pauses, in the small looks. In the moments that weren't written in any script, Tupac didn't play lucky falling for justice. He actually fell, even knowing that Janet was secretly married the entire time, even knowing none of it could go anywhere. He opened the door anyway, and the camera caught every single moment. Number 16. Janet got a Razzie nomination despite critical praise. The Golden Raspberry Awards exist to publicly mock bad performances, and in 1994 they nominated Janet Jackson for Worst Actress for her role in Poetic Justice. The thing is, actual critics didn't agree. Roger Ebert called her believable. The chemistry with Tupac was undeniable. Audiences responded to her. The performance was quiet, guarded, internally rich. Not the kind of acting that screams for trophies, but the kind that makes you forget you're watching someone perform. Janet didn't attend the Razzies, didn't acknowledge the nomination, just went quiet and let the work exist without defending it. And the Razzies' reasoning was transparent to anyone paying attention. She was a pop star in her first major film role. Easy, high-profile target. It's a pattern the awards have repeated over and over. Madonna got hit, Mariah got hit. Janet joined a very specific club. The irony is thick. The same year the Razzies came for her acting, her music for the film was generating awards recognition that actually meant something. Number 17. Again, hit #1 and got Oscar and Golden Globe nods. Janet didn't just act in Poetic Justice. She gave the film its emotional core. The closing credits song, a haunting, vulnerable piece she co-wrote with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, the same production team behind Rhythm Nation, and That's the Way Love Goes, was built specifically for the film, and it landed hard. It hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and dominated radio. Then came awards season, and the song received nominations for Best Original Song at both the Academy Awards and the Golden Globes. Janet performed it at a ceremony, standing on a stage in front of the same industry that had handed her a Razzie nomination months earlier. She didn't win, but the nomination said everything. While one awards body was mocking her acting, another was recognizing her artistry. Both things happened in the same season for the same film. The song became one of the defining sounds of 1993, and when people think about Poetic Justice now, that closing piece of music is often what they feel first. Sometimes the score outlives the film that carried it, almost at the end, and the best is still coming. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next, and drop your city or country in the comments. I want to see how far this video is reaching. Number 18, an actor from the film was killed in a shooting at age 22. Dedrick D. Gobert played Dookie in Poetic Justice. A small role, a familiar face from the neighborhood scenes. He'd also appeared in Boys in the Hood. Singleton liked working with him. Then on November 19, 1994, in Mira Loma, California, Gobert was at a street race. An argument broke out. Gunfire followed. Gobert was shot and killed. He was 22 years old. The shooter, Sonny Nunez, was arrested, tried, and convicted. The trial revealed gang ties and a motive rooted in retaliation, the exact cycle of violence that Singleton had spent his career trying to put on screen in a way that made audiences feel its weight. Gobert's death wasn't a plot point. It was a real life ended too soon, in exactly the circumstances that the films he'd appeared in had been trying to warn people about. The cast felt it. Another young man gone. Another reminder that the world the cameras were filming wasn't just a backdrop. It was real, and it was still happening. Number 19. Usher's debut single was buried on the soundtrack before the Diamond Certified albums, before the Vegas residency, before the Super Bowl halftime show. Usher Raymond was 14 years old, with one song to his name, and it was on the Poetic Justice soundtrack. Call Me a Mac was his first official single ever released. It didn't chart high. Most people who bought that soundtrack don't even remember it was on there, but it mattered enormously for one reason. It put Usher's name in an actual record store, on an actual physical product, connected to an actual film. The soundtrack also featured TLC and a strong mix of hip-hop and R&B that captured the film's temperature perfectly. The album peaked at number 23 on the Billboard 200 and went gold. And somewhere in the track listing, a teenager from Chattanooga was making his first professional move, hoping someone would notice. Usher later acknowledged that the soundtrack was his introduction to the industry, a foot in the door that cracked open a career that would eventually become one of the biggest in pop music history. The song didn't make him a star, but it started the journey, and every legend needs a starting point. Number 20. A major theater chain refused to screen the film. Before Poetic Justice even opened, one of the largest theater chains in America said it wouldn't show it, Cineplex Odeon. They refused to book the film, citing concerns about potential violence, gang activity, and public safety. Sound familiar? It should. They'd made the exact same move 2 years earlier when Boys and the Hood was released. Singleton was furious. Columbia Pictures pushed back publicly and named what it was: racism. The assumption, stated out loud, wrapped in the language of safety, was that a film with a black cast would bring trouble to their theaters. Cineplex Odeon held their position. Other chains stepped in. Poetic Justice opened anyway, and it opened at number 1, made $11.7 million in its first weekend. The audience was there, had always been there, and showed up without incident. But Cineplex Odeon's refusal left a mark that a box office number can't fully erase. It wasn't about safety, it was about who Hollywood believed deserved to see themselves on screen, and in which buildings. Poetic Justice won that weekend. But the fight it revealed was much longer and much older than any single film. Bonus. Regina King confirmed what everyone on set already knew for years. It was just something people whispered about, that the chemistry between Janet Jackson and Tupac Shakur in Poetic Justice wasn't entirely a performance. Then Regina King finally said it out loud. She was there. She watched it happen in real time, day after day on that set. Having Janet and Tupac was huge, King said. He was one of the biggest hip-hop stars, and she was definitely the biggest pop star. I think they were both impressed with each other, but I don't think either of them wanted to let the other know. But King went further. She talked about the tension she watched play out between takes. The glances, the energy, the thing that doesn't have a clean name. I don't know if Janet will ever admit to it, King added, but there was a bit of that chemistry going on. Janet was secretly married to Rene Elizondo Jr. the entire time. Tupac was 20 years old, living inside a chaos he couldn't fully control. And somewhere in the middle of a film shoot, something real moved between them. Not physical, but emotional. A pull. The kind that shows up in footage even when you're trying to suppress it. King didn't speculate, she confirmed. And if you go back and watch every scene they share, you'll see exactly what she's talking about. That wasn't acting. That was two people letting themselves feel something they were probably supposed to leave alone. And those were 20 strange facts about Poetic Justice. This film survived riot-interrupted production, studio interference, cultural boycotts, tabloid controversies, and a love story that nobody could fully explain. It remains one of the most emotionally honest films of the 90s. Not in spite of all that chaos, but because of it. If you made it this far, leave a like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me which fact surprised you the most. And don't forget to suggest another movie that deserves a list of strange facts. See you in the next video.